All right, I'm gonna just go ahead and get started. In case of an emergency, there are the exits just right there. There's another exit sign there and an exit sign there. So my name is Carlos Negron. I am the president, the ASE president of Transportation and Development. That's the T&DI Institute. With us today is Miss Abby Owens. Abby is the director of public works at the city of Plano, where she's held various roles since joining the city in 2013. Her journey in public works began in 2017, marked by her leadership at implementing the department's asset management program. Abby also served as assistant director overseeing community services, including fleet director. Let's see, fleet, environmental waste services, and asset management. Sorry, got tripped up on that. And water and wastewater operations. Prior to relocating to Texas, Abby made a significant contribution in Atlanta metro area, collaborating with local governments to implement water supply and sustainability programs. She's received her bachelor's degree in biology from Emory University and a master's degree in public administration from Georgia State University. Today, she will be presenting the pavement management with asphalt overlays in the city of Plano. Any Plano residents in the audience? Yes, 1, 2, 3, just a few. And city of Plano employees right along here in case anyone you want to talk to them later. So Abby Owens, hey, good job. Oh yeah, why don't you have a mic?
Okay, good morning. I'm Abby Owens. Nice to meet you all. I am not an engineer, as you can see, but I brought our wonderful staff here. Chad in traffic engineering volunteered me for this. Samson is our senior pavement engineer, and Chris Best is our construction superintendent. I will say Chris has been with the department a very long time and actually had a big involvement in implementing our overlays and had a lot of history and knowledge. So if you want to grill me on anything pre-2017, I'm going to volunteer Chris. All your text.specs questions and everything will go to Samson. So just putting that out there. So I asked them both to present and they said, you're good. We'll just be there to support. So Public Works in Plano, though, just so you do know, we do water, sewer, streets, sidewalks, alleys, screening walls, traffic signals, drainage. And then we also maintain all of the city's fleet, which includes police and fire. And then also all the asset management program is run through Public Works, and we collaborate with our engineering department. So the way I kind of describe Public Works projects versus engineering projects is Public Works is going to do anything that's basically under 50% of the asset needs to be maintained. It's not going to come with civil engineering drawings that need to be followed. We're not going to do full subgrade replacement all the way down. What we're working off of is doing concrete panel replacements. If it's got drainage issues or something more significant, we're going to highlight that and identify that for our engineering department to actually work on. So Plano had a boom in the 80s and 90s. And so the concrete streets in Plano are about 30 years old or more. And about 50% of our streets are over that age. And so that's really important whenever I talk with residents, because we try to explain to them, although it feels like all of the city is under construction at one time, it's not. But it's because we had significant booms in the same areas. So you can see on our map here, anything that is in red is actually a significantly older street. And so this map age doesn't change because the majority of our streets, we have not done full replacement on to where we give them a brand new installation date. Everything we do is really focused on concrete repair and placement. The other part we usually highlight is if we were to replace all of our streets infrastructure in the city, it would cost us over $5.5 billion. Not to mention the absolute headache that it would be to go through this. Our pavement management plan for Public Works, our goal is to keep our streets in like a C and better condition. So we're going to do minor repairs, which include joint sealing, but then we're also going to do something that's more invasive. We do some of the concrete panel rehabs all the way to major replacement. And then on our arterials is where we come back through and do that ultra thin overlay. Of the arterial lane miles, we have just over 1,100 of those. And this is kind of some photos. And I don't see Dan Prendergast here, but any of you that work in BGE, you've worked with Dan Prendergast. He is our director. About a year ago, he left. But I will say this was a lot of his effort and brain work that was put into putting a lot of these slides together. So we went out, took pictures of all the different streets by grade, and this was used to help develop our pavement management plan and sell it to council for when we went out for our 2021 bond referendum. So everything that's kind of on that A through D section is really public works. When it's D and F, as long as that street needs less than 50% repaired, public works would do the work to it. If it's anything more than 50%, that's when we would push off to our engineering team. So as I mentioned, minimal maintenance stuff, but also the more invasive things like concrete panel replacement. We use Cartograph / OpenGov asset management to do all of our streets scoring and tracking. We track not just our PCI scores, which we're getting ready to do another round of PCI scores this year, but we look and see where all the scores at. But we also track all of our contractor repairs that we've done. So then they not artificially, behind the scenes, the estimated OCI increases based upon those tasks being completed. And similarly, whenever we have a full reconstruction of a street, once engineering turns in those design drawings, the street age is then changed as an installation of a newer year, and that estimated OCI score goes up. We have two different curves built for deterioration in Cartograph. One is just a concrete deterioration. The other one is concrete with asphalt overlay. So that's how we kind of track each of ours. This is our residential lane miles. So we only do the overlays on arterials right now, but we have just over 1,500 lane miles of residential roads, and it's very similar treatment here as well. We have two different approaches for residential. Beyond just our in-house crews that do smaller replacements that are more immediate, we have what we call requirements contracts, which is an alley or a street has deteriorated to a point where Public Works need to send in a contractor. It's more that in-house can handle, but not part of our larger residential zones that we normally would plan. So we have those, and those are funded with our capital maintenance fund. The larger projects, which we call residential sweeps, those are going to be square blocked off areas that we have in the city. And we focus on going into those about once every 25 years and knocking out all of the streets, alleys, and sidewalk repairs that need to be done at that time. Typically takes us about 2.5-ish years to get through that neighborhood section, but our goal is to not come back for another 25 years. Again, kind of the overlay map showing what we estimate in Cartograph on what these PCI scores are, and our goal is to keep them in that yellow and green colors. Pavement management plan, as I mentioned, although the residents think that it is best to go and do full concrete panel or full street replacement, we really try to focus on staying ahead and doing all the preventative maintenance that we can. We want to extend the life of all those concrete streets. So as much as I've been talking about concrete streets, how many people in here are pavement engineers? Really? Nobody? Wow, this will be great. Okay, so let me start off by saying, I just assumed everybody was, that for us, the concrete streets, basically I say water is the enemy for us. And so what that means is whenever water gets in between the joints of the concrete, it can expand when it freezes and cause cracking. It also can erode the subgrade. So our goal with any of our pavement strategies is to keep the water from getting underneath and in between those panels. So whenever we do a concrete panel replacement or we do joint sealing, our whole goal is to keep that water out. Then the ultra thin overlay will come behind that, and I'll kind of show you that. So this is also a quick high-level overview of all the square footages of concrete Public Works has replaced. This includes sidewalks, and it includes streets, and it includes our alleys as well. So estimated costs is probably one of the things that we get a lot of questions on. And so regular concrete pavement replacement, both of these that are showing up here are showing estimated cost per lane mile. So for us, our arterials are usually about 6 lane miles. So you would take that number and you'd multiply it by 6 to get what that cost is of a full mile. And so what I really want to show you is the bottom red number is really expensive. So when you take 2.4 times 6, you get almost $14.4 million to do 1 mile of replacement of an arterial roadway. That is really expensive, not to mention the amount of time and construction delays that occurs and goes through. But if you stay on the upper part, which is even with our concrete panel replacement, which can be, I tell residents, we don't intend for it to feel like a Mario Kart experience when you're driving down the roads, but we fix the panels in 1 lane and then we move to the next lane. And so with these, our major replacements, even we're doing those larger concrete replacements, it's about $350,000 per lane mile to do those replacements. And then it is additional $125-ish thousand per lane mile to do the ultra thin overlay as well. Residentials are very similar. We try to stay ahead of them as much as we can. But what ultimately we try to explain is it is more cost effective to do the preventative maintenance and do small panel repairs and reconstruction, or small panel repairs and replacement than to do full panel, full roadway reconstruction. So why did we choose to go with the overlay route? What we were finding, that Chris tells me, is that before we were going and doing arterial rehab panel replacements back probably 15, 20 years ago, we were noticing that we were having to come back to those arterial streets sooner than we really wanted to. And so it was causing us to keep coming back. So our goal was to try to figure out what technologies, what options are out there that we could utilize to extend those concrete repairs and ultimately provide that smoother ride. Our concern was residents in Plano expect our streets to be concrete. That is what they think. If we put down asphalt, they're going to think that we're somehow cheaping out, which I get that question all the time. And so what we wanted to do was pilot it somewhere to try to see what happens if we do just concrete panel replacement in one section of a roadway. What happens if we do the concrete panel replacement and then put the ultra thin overlay on top of it? And so I'm going to skip ahead since many of you said you're not pavement engineers, just real quick so I can show you some slides. So the asphalt overlay is, like I mentioned, we do the concrete panel replacement first, and then the spray paver comes behind that, and it puts down an emulsion. And that emulsion layer is actually what seals the concrete and keeps the water from getting into the joints and causing damage. Then behind that is when the ultra thin overlay goes on top. The overlay is about 3/4 of an inch thick, give or take, depending upon how the road kind of undulates. So with this approach, everyone thinks that the asphalt is the part that is actually waterproof. It's not. It's actually very porous. It does actually even reflect back heat, and it's a little bit of a cooling effect. And it does fade over time. And that's because we use a different aggregate spec that it's TxDOT 348, right, Simpson? Yeah, 348. If you want to look that up, I have a printed copy if you'd like to just dig into those details. But this is where it shows what we do is we go do edge milling, is what the contractor will do, and then comes behind with the spray paver with the emulsion, and then they have the layering asphalt on top. So the emulsion's on the left. It's a very shiny looking black. And then right behind it, the ultra thin overlay comes over. It's two different machines doing the overlay. There's one machine that kind of does the edges and the curves that are harder, the turn lanes that are harder to get to. Then the larger spray paver is in the main lanes. And I'll show you this one too. And so we also have inspectors out there during the process taking temperature readings, both the asphalt that's showing up and as it's moving its way through the machine, and then on the backside as well. We do have 2 inspectors, and these are night photos, and I'll talk a little bit about why. But that's really the part that I wanted to kind of show you all about the overlay as we continue moving forward. So what we decided to do was pilot this approach on our Independence Road. So those Plano residents that had seen it originally, it was in around late 2017, we put this overlay on. It was from 15th Street up to Parker Road in both directions. And we kind of just monitored it for a while. The original thought was that this would last about 10 years. And so our original pavement management plan was built on completing all the arterial roads, which is about 136 miles of roads, and completing that in a 10-year period. We have actually, I would love to say this was a really great, ingenious idea that we came up with all by ourselves, but we learned from Farmers Branch. Any Farmers Branch residents? No? Oh, there's one. So Webb's Chapel, there's a section down in Farmers Branch that this was actually done on first. Also, NTTDA and TxDOT used to, but NTTA also uses the overlay. We actually drove on the section from George Bush, I think it's right around just south of there, coming into here on the tollway, just to kind of see what theirs looks like. But our main things that we were going to kind of monitor is how did the concrete only section do versus the concrete with the overlay? That was the first. Second, how many residents called to complain about the asphalt overlay and that it's black and it doesn't match the concrete? And then the third was, how long is it going to last? Because we wanted to try something that could get ahead and we could kind of monitor while we continue to do our normal concrete repair and replacement. So far to date, what we noticed is when we had our first construction or PCI scores driven up until the second time, the PCI score on the asphalt overlay section was higher than the part that was just concrete repair. Additionally, we noticed that although there was some reflective cracking that we're seeing on the overlay, it's performing very well. There's one patch that we just had to complete, and that's because in the process, one of the water valves was covered up, and we had to get to that valve in order to do an isolation on a water line. So a resident told me it was peeling off, and I got really worried, and Samson and I noticed it was a valve. So there was a reason for the overlay missing. We confirmed with our utility ops. Also, whenever we look back at it, there's only like 4 minor potholes in that area of the overlay where we have more than 20 on the concrete replacements that were done north of Parker. Our goal, as I mentioned before, was a 10-year plan. Because we're now rounding into that 8th year, the overlay is actually looking really good and doing really well. So we're going to have our sealing contractor come this year, and we're going to do 2 different seals, one that matches the color, and then one that's just a traditional black, just again to kind of monitor what residents think and what they share with us. So from a life cycle cost perspective, what we've kind of looked at throughout this process is just traditional concrete replacement. If you assume the concrete street will last 40 years, your cost per mile is about $450,000. That's kind of what our benchmarks have kind of told us. But if you do concrete repair and the overlay, and you do joint sealing, and you plan a 15-year overlay process, it's closer to about $165,000 per mile to do that maintenance cost. If we were to just do our original concrete repair and overlay with a 10-year plan, then that would be closer to $235,000. Still well significantly less than a complete reconstruction of a concrete street. And that's pre-tariff estimates. So I'm not sure what those are going to look like soon, but that's kind of one of the things. For us also, because the overlay and Independence is doing really well, we've now shifted our pavement replacement plan for the arterials to be a 15-year plan. So our goal is to complete all 136 miles of overlays in a 15-year period that started in 2021. So if all goes well, we can get utilities in the right spots and everything. We hope to be done by 2036. And then we will restart milling off the overlay, doing concrete repair again, and then putting down a new overlay. With the Independence Road section being about 5 years ahead of our first next overlay that was done, we feel like that 5-year window will give us, one, it'll give us an insights on when we do the next bond for that section, how much we'll need, but 2, how well did the concrete do underneath that overlay? In the process, we've done, by the end of this year, we'll have just under 50 miles done of overlay, and we've learned some things through the process. Also, when we talk to residents about the replacement, I briefly mentioned this when it comes to the construction scheduling, but for the normal 1-mile replacement of roadway, it could be 18 to 24 months. For us, we're able to do concrete repairs and then followed up with an overlay. If you push those together, it'd be 6 to 8 months. Other benefits, obviously the ride quality. I nicely joke with residents that it's a revenue recovery source for all the speeding tickets that will ever be issued on there. And then also it really looks nice. Residents often ask why we can't match concrete colors whenever we do concrete panel replacement. They're very sensitive on the colors. And then also it's a little bit quieter of a ride, not just for the car, but also the traffic driving over there. And then we've also noticed improved visibility for safety reasons. So the pavement markings that go on top of it, instead of just our typical reflectors and buttons that we have, the pavement markings really stand out, especially in rain. And then one thing that we didn't put on here, but we've also noticed is because that ultra thin layer is porous, water will kind of go through there for that first half inch or so of rainfall. And then it's actually even better driving conditions for our residents too. So this is our progress to date. I always like to kind of put up there, our first big investment in this was our 2021 bond, where we had asked for $100 million. The plan was to do 50 miles with that $100 million. And by the end of this summer, which will be the full spend of that $100 million for us, we'll have completed almost that number, which is like 45.6 miles, I think, 48.6 miles, I think is what it is. But we'll be just under that. And then the other part is when we're going out and doing our current bond referendum that our residents are evaluating to vote on, which is in May, we've asked for $130 million. We're actually going to be able to do less roads with that $130 million. And that's for 2 reasons. One, our goal is to not have multiple parallel arterials under construction at the same time. And so we only have so many roadways that we can do concrete on and then follow up with an overlay. Also, some of our roadways need to have the water or sewer infrastructure improved underneath them first. And so we want to make sure we give our engineering department time to do that. And then as we've shifted into this 15-year plan instead of a 10-year plan, the pressure to get 50 miles done up front has kind of, we can stretch it out a little bit further now. So we did build into the bond 10% increase in overlay costs for construction costs and 8% increase for concrete, based upon our best guess knowledge on what we had at the time with all of our information. But this is kind of our plan overall. And this is one of the slides I developed for when we were sharing about the bond referendum. So residents can see sometimes it's higher, sometimes it's lower, but we plan to average about 8 to 10 per year to hit that 2036 number for all the arterials. This is our overlay map. If you haven't driven on one of our overlays, you can go tour around the city on all these different spots. The green ones are the locations we've completed. The yellow are spots that are currently going to be overlaid. This year, we've got 2 contractors that will be doing our overlays. Last year, we had 1. And because the overlay time period is so short, you can only put down the overlay when the temperatures are above 55 degrees. And so that cycle and then got shorter, and our contractor ran out of time. So we have a second contractor that bid this year. So we'll have 2 contractors working on overlays to do about 16 miles this year is what's planned. Anything that's in blue is a location that we are currently doing concrete panel replacement and rehabilitation. And then we will go back through with an overlay next summer or the summer after, just depending upon where that location is. You'll see the blue section that's highlighted on Parker Road. I know our Plano residents in here had mentioned. So Parker Road was actually a water line replacement project first. We needed to make sure that the old cast iron line underneath was replaced before we did brand new concrete and then an overlay on top of it. So that process went through first. And then we are now doing the last part of the concrete panel replacements, and then an overlay will be planned for next summer for that one. Same thing is happening on Park Road as well. We've got the connections that are cast iron that go underneath the roadway. Our engineering team is working on updating those. Then we'll do concrete panel replacement, and then Park should be in 2027-ish. But this is kind of our plan. We don't usually put a map out much further than about an 18-month to 2-year part. And that's partly because of council approval to make sure that the funding is actually allocated. But 2, it could change depending upon what goes on with engineering. For instance, the bottom section of Plano Parkway, even though that is an older roadway, our engineering group is about to start a major sewer line capacity project down there. So we just continue to patch the potholes until they start moving on that project. Nothing makes a resident madder than putting down brand new concrete and taking it right back out. This is the overlay process here. So high level kind of lessons learned. We originally had just done day work, and that was good. But what we did is we tried night work, and we tried that because traffic volumes are less. Plus, in the summertime, it is really hot being near those machines. So our contractors actually like that too. So we piloted the night work to see how it goes. We did get some residential complaints, but usually once we told them that it was going to only be there for a couple hours and then it would move on, they kind of eased up a little bit. Some residents could still hear some. We did learn in that process that any of the edge milling does need to be done during the daytime, but then we could do the night work behind it. It actually went so well that we now build that into each of our contracts to have the night work piece whenever the temperatures shift. And then on top of that, we're actually evaluating and kind of discussing internally, should we even allow concrete type night work and prep in order to alleviate some of those congestion concerns? Because closing 2 lanes at night is much better than closing 2 lanes from 9 a.m. to 4 p.m. It definitely causes a little bit more of a headache. Timing is everything. So for us, originally when we were doing this, we would put out our contracts with the intent of the notice to proceed being very shortly after, and then the contractors would mobilize. What we noticed is that sometimes that can reduce the number of contractors available. They have much bigger jobs going on. 8 to 9 miles might sound like a lot, but TxDOT and other places, not just here in the DFW area, are going to be putting down many, many more miles in that time period. So we're kind of like a small fish in that pond. So for us, we wanted to try something different. So this year, what we actually did is we did the bid and everything in January, and we awarded the contract in February. And we told them that we would issue a notice to proceed once the temperatures were going to start approaching above that 55 degrees. So both of our vendors will actually have already started some of the edge milling, and they'll be coming out and starting the overlays here in the next couple of weeks. So that was a big lesson learned for us. We also realized if we were trying to do them with the immediate notice to proceed, we were in the same bid schedule and cycle as those larger contract jobs too. Hot applied, so that's where I was mentioning we've got like the paving machine that goes down and does the majors, but we allow hot applied on the turn lanes, and that's just because of those curves and how narrow those areas are. The hot applied does have to be done at that time. Markings, our first go around, we did not have a pavement marking plan, and we were put down based upon what had been there before, if I'm right, Chris, is that right? Yeah, thank you. And so what we do now is we actually have a third-party consultant that we hire to do an actual full pavement marking plan so that the contractor sub knows exactly what to do. We also learned in the intersections, we actually have traffic engineering meet us out there ahead of time, and they are a huge partner in that process as well, right, Chad? That does make a huge difference. We had some puppy tracks that weren't the best. Let's go with that. Valves and manholes. So my bigger background is actually on our water and sewer side. And it's really important to know where your valves are. So we have great maps and we use OpenGov and Cartograph Asset Management to locate them, but it's even better if you can see them when you go out there. And so sometimes the valves and the manholes will get covered up in the overlay process. What we've worked on now is we actually buy 3/4 inch ring risers for our manhole and valve stacks. And so what we have is we keep those in-house at the warehouse. Whenever the project's going to be starting, our inspectors and the contractor will grab them. They'll go set them ahead of the overlay machine. And we have 2 inspectors currently on each of our asphalt overlay night jobs and day jobs. One is staying ahead doing temperature monitoring and keeping an eye out for the valves and the manholes. And the other one on the backside is making sure the spray paver is working, and they're checking to make sure that there's no gaps in the overlay when it's being put down. So we still do have occasionally valves and manholes that are covered up. And so one of the things, and I don't have it in here, but I should include, is we had to come up with how are we going to patch the overlay. That was one of the things that we kind of struggled with. So right now, if we have a water line repair that occurs and it's a small patch that needs to be done, we actually will have our in-house crews pour the concrete back level with the overlay. Although it doesn't match, it gets relatively close as the overlay fades over time. And what we've noticed is that teeny tiny difference that they might experience driving over the overlay is insignificant. Whenever we go through the process of removing the overlay and coming back through, our contractor will actually go through, mill that 3/4 inch concrete over that's there, and then we'll put the overlay back on top of it. So we'll eventually get back to the same as the other concrete. Also, we have tried Permapatch as one of our options. We've tried rock asphalt with tack to see how that does. We have our asphalt pothole or patching truck going to council tonight. Once we have that, we will have a better approach to how we're going to do some of these temporary replacements. But engineering had a project on Jupiter Road where they had to go underneath or rip out the overlay and do a water line, a sewer line connection. And so we just had the contractor come back and pour that concrete level so that we could extend the life of that one as well. There's one other thing that's going to stay on the overlay side. I'll think about it later. So kind of a high level summary for us is we've really shifted to that 15-year approach. We feel that that's really going to do well for us. We do not get complaints about the overlay anymore. People that have recently relocated here from up north where they're used to asphalt streets will usually ask us, why are you putting down asphalt when you have concrete, and why did you pick concrete to start? And so we kind of help explain to them that the concrete's still there. It's actually being improved first, and then we'll put the overlay on top. The residents that we were concerned about would be complaining about the asphalt and how it looks cheap or it doesn't look like it's going to be a good fix. They're now calling and saying, when are you getting to my street? We get more, when are you going to my road? When are you going to my road than anything? And then when are you going to start doing residentials? That's the other question that we get. So we're not doing residentials anytime soon. But on top of that, whenever people do call, they have noticed if you drive the Independence overlay, it does fade. It is not it's not nearly as contrast as it is when it first goes down. Even sections of Parker Road that were done a couple years ago, probably 2 years ago now, even those have faded as well. So they're starting to realize I would rather have a nice smooth ride that extends the life of the pavement. It's okay that they don't match. Also, it really kind of helps us prolong those streets, and it's really given us another tool in our toolbox for doing pavement management. Our PCI scores, as I mentioned, we're having our consultant come back out and we're going to do new scores this year, and we will reprioritize where we do our pavement repair. Our residential areas are really focused more on the age of the infrastructure in the residential, the number of complaints that we get. We go out and investigate those and kind of rank those scores. And then we look at our PCI scores on top of that. But it's a balancing act because some of those areas also have water lines that need to be replaced or they have drainage issues. And so we try to balance all of the factors to make sure that when we go into a residential neighborhood, the water line and the sewer line and the drainage infrastructure will be in a good working condition for another 25 years. If not, we kind of shift that neighborhood on our list and only fix the streets that really need it so that we don't have to go back multiple times. In one of our sections of the city, we have, it's called Q4. We've got a section that is a water line replacement right now. And during the water line replacement, engineering will actually repair the streets in that area. Then we'll come back through with our contractor that's doing the other 3 areas of that neighborhood, and we'll go do any of the alley repairs that need to be done. Proactive pothole repair. we go through and we have our construction inspectors do surveys of how many potholes are on each of our arterials. We've kind of shifted away from that now that we're going to be doing PCI scores, but we do have our crews driving those arterials. I just remind residents, we have 136 miles, not even lane miles, but miles of roadway that is major arterials. We might see it, but if you call us because you see it every day, we'll put that on our list. We'll make sure we get out there. Our patching usually happens within about 48 hours of the call coming in. We are always trying to improve. So some of the things that we've shifted in the overlays, we've tried doing just 2 passes on the roads instead of having each lane done individually. We've had it where there's a seam right down the middle. We've switched back now to every single lane. Samson and Chris can advocate either way on why they like one or the other, but we've tried that. We've learned that overall, that coordination with engineering is important. We've had a couple of times where a private development comes in and therefore we will pause on putting the overlay in that section so we can come do it at a later date. And then we've also had where if we don't coordinate with our traffic engineering group, an entire signalized intersection might have capacity lanes and things added to it as well. So the Spring Creek corridor is one of the project areas that engineering is moving to next for traffic signal and improving. And so we are holding off on doing any concrete repairs in Spring Creek because we want to make sure that we do those at the same time. Coordinating with the other departments. Parks is also doing median restoration projects where they're putting in trees and upgrading the irrigation. And so their plan is to try to stay ahead of us and do them first, but they're trying to catch up on what we've already done. So we said, as long as it doesn't require tapping a water main that's underneath the overlay, that's okay. But we really do have to coordinate better. So we have our overall construction improvement plan or community investment plan that we all work together on. But sometimes we're not all coordinating on what's going out beyond another year or two. So really kind of having those conversations in-house is what's been really important as we continue to improve overall. So, all right, did it in 30 minutes. So Plano residents, you can take these numbers down. They are faster than I am probably in responding to your questions. But overall, I mean, you're welcome to email us and anything. What questions do you all have? Since now I know most of you aren't pavement engineers, I have like a huge sigh of relief. Yes. Samson. Yeah. But type B, I know that one at least. There we go.
So surface ability classification, we use class.
And like I said, it's text dot 348 if you'd like to see this back.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes. I don't know on a full road replacement. So because those go into our engineering department when they do the full design and reconstruction, I can get it for you. If you send me an email, I'll work with them to get it. Overall, like I said, we've calculated it's about $2.4 million in order to do 1 lane of arterial. And so if you were to do the math out from that one. Yes.
A few more details on the concrete placement, where you go back to the same section, different subgrade, you require core drifting, you allow hammer through the basic steps on that.
Here you go, Samson, go through the basics.
So as a part of the department, import maintenance of great. So we don't put too much there or anything like that. So we try to match the existing subgrade elevation. If there is any subgrade loss, so we just put like 3 inches up to 4 inches of flex space. Other than that, if we have any ground improvement to correct the subgrade, we may have to add the thickness of the flex space and we take density on the subgrade.
And when you core into the pavement, requiring special equipment or
so
they just let.
So we use lift off method for remove concrete. So we follow through the concrete replacement. So we have to remove the whole section pavement and place what for the concrete based on the thickness, the existing thickness.
That help? Did that help answer? Yeah. Okay. But main thing is for us with pavement, we go back and match whatever thickness is there. Sometimes it surprises us when we get there and it's not what we thought it was. It'll be 12 inches instead of 8 or 10. And so we just match what's there and our goal is to try to extend it. Somebody else? Yes. Don't need surface treatment.
So I
Just the-
think we use polymer modified emulsion. It helps us to bond the concrete with the asphalt. So that she showed earlier with a spray paper, which lays down the emulsion and the asphalt mix at the same time. So we have a layer of emulsion. It will help us to bind the asphalt with the concrete. No, we don't do any surface. We just have to clean.
You grind the edges.
Grind the edges when close to the edge milling.
Yeah, edge milling.
Whenever we finish that section, that's where we must go.
But we don't do any sort of like roughing up the concrete or anything before the emulsion goes on.
So we're placing only three quarters of an inch. So we don't have that much drainage issue with it. So we leave 6 inch away from the curb. So we still have got some better line. So we feel like we try to utilize that section as drainage.
But that's why we won't go thicker, is because we don't want to affect the drainage of the roads. And again, we don't do it on residentials. Usually if we have a drainage issue, it's going to be on one of our residential streets, and we don't do overlays in the residential.
I think, like earlier in the presentation, she said that we place the emulsion to protect the pavement so that water doesn't penetrate into the pavement. So we try to protect the pavement from any erosion of the support.
But as far as like underneath, you mean in the subgrade, if there's any water underneath there? Mm-hmm. So again, we go through and we do concrete panel replacements first to try to address any of those issues that are showing. But no, I mean, it's not perfect. We can't, make it perfect underneath there, but that's what we're hoping is we do as much of the panel replacements as we can. And then again, when we mill the overlay off and we come back in that 15-year time period, there will be panels that need to be further replaced in issues. So part of the reason the Parks Department is doing the median rehabilitations that they're doing, not only are they trying to put the right tree in the right place, so trying to do taproot trees versus branching trees, but also irrigate so that the trees aren't trying to go underneath the roadway and take the moisture from out underneath the roadway as well. There's another question. Yes.
So for crossover and tailings, we use conventional paper. For the mailings, we use spray paper, where that spray paper replaces the emulsion and the asphalt mix at the same time. But for hot applied, like you said, like you see right here, we just spray the hot applied, and it's non-tracking. If you drive on top of this emulsion, it doesn't belong. So it will give us to come in place. That's what mixed with the conventional paper. So because of that manufacturing.
Second question, have y'all, since you're edge milling, now you got a flip, leftover gutter and your asphalt, you know that or asphalt.
We don't.
Are you experiencing freestyle and
No, we don't edge mill along the gutter line. We just edge mill close to inlets that within on the left, right? On the left leg, or whenever we begin the overlay placement close to intersection. That's the only place where we do edge milling. We don't do any edge milling along the gutter line.
Yes.
So that material is draining into your gutter. Goes into the asphalt, and it'll be 2 days after the rain, you still see it seeping out. It's the gutter line. Going down the gutter line. You'll see TechStop projects that are draining onto the shoulder. And they use the same symbol.
What was your question in the back? Yeah. Yes, I talked about that a little bit in the beginning. So yes, Independence was our practice project, our pilot project, and it was from 15th Street to Parker. And we did it in 2017, so it's been 8 years. And yes, we are actually this year, we're gonna have a sealing contractor come through. It's one that we use on our other projects. We're gonna do one section, so from 15th to Park will be sealer that matches. It's a little bit lighter color. And then from Park to Parker will be traditional black sealer, just to kind of see. You're welcome. Yes.
Mentioned, two contracts. Contract for
So I know,
Yeah,
Go ahead.
Texas with Jago. I think we used to work with ABR, Asphalt, Austin Beach.
yeah, we've used Austin Bridge, Texas Bit, and then Janko,
Jago.
Jago. That's it. And that's our newest one. They're our first time that we're partnering with them. Anything else? Uh-huh. Not that specific. No, it's a little bit more. So we've got large scale developments that go in. So at Windhaven and Spring Creek, for instance, there was a development that was going in there and we knew about it when we were starting to do our overlay. So there's a section that we did an overlay in that area so that it wouldn't get destroyed in that process. So we actually stopped ahead. We knew it ahead of time. It was, then we'll shift that into a different section of our overlay projects. We will not do it like if a corporation's coming in and we're not going to leave like a section. It's just if there's a large scale development that we know going forward, we wouldn't do it ahead of time. We'll just pause on that. It has to be a pretty significant one that we know is going to take multiple years and it'd be okay.
You mentioned that you measure the health of pavement, and that residents have called in regarding color, potholes, things like that. And one of your responses was that you can see some of the better contrasting striping at night, some of the benefits, right?
Mhm.
Have you ever kind of said to them, hey, it's because you're not hitting as many potholes, it's less impactful on your vehicles, therefore you're actually getting a better ride quality?
We talk about improved ride quality, but I do not mention specifically it's better on your vehicle. No, but we do talk about improved ride quality. Okay. My honest opinion about how we used to do pavement scores was following the standard that was out there to do sample sections. And so sample sections on concrete pavement is not a very good, accurate representation of what that would look like. We are switching into full sampling where we will do the entire lane of an arterial road or a residential and get all of that and be able to do a better aggregate score. And so when we first did ride quality scores, because of all the joints that are in concrete, it gave us a very low value. And therefore, of course, the overlay was much higher on Independence. So now that we are going back into having more overlays of roads done, we will include it as part of that. But the challenge with PCI scores on arterials is we don't have a bunch of different approaches to it. It's basically, are the utilities underneath in good working condition? If so, what's the condition of this pavement? Should we move forward with panel replacement and then overlay? It's kind of in that tiering. And then is there a parallel that we need to pause on? And so just because we go through and get the updated arterial scores on the PCI for those arterials does not mean that it's going to bump one up over another. For instance, Plano Parkway from Coit to Independence is not going to have good ride quality, nor is it going to have good pavement scores. But that's not going to adjust how we approach it because there's a sewer project that's getting ready to happen. So, but yeah, we do talk about ride quality. We just don't share it as much because the residentials, you're driving slower, the ride quality is a little bit different. So anything else? I know lunch is next. Oh, there's one more. Oh, like a finished product of it? The process? I thought, well, it's kind of zoomed in too much probably. Yeah. I don't really have, because these, I mean, this is it. This one right here is the fresh, with the fresh asphalt that's gone down.
That's a spray paper.
It's a spray paver, yeah. So it's spraying the emulsion at the same time it's putting the ultra thin overlay on it. And it has, leveling is not the right word, but the leveling device behind it. that our inspectors are constantly watching, because we pay per square foot, square yard, thank you. And so we want to make sure we're getting it at 3/4 of an inch. And so that's why we do it per square yard instead of doing however much they put down. We're just going to pay for that. The emulsion, the spray mix, yeah. It's a liquid. It's hot. It's very hot. Very hot. Yeah, so that goes down first and it's spraying out of it. There's like little nozzles throughout that it's spraying the emulsion down. And then right behind that is where the asphalt is coming in through the overlay, the leveling machine. What is it called? The leveling part. It is a leveler, right? Yeah, it's a roller thing. We actually have a video. I'll try to send it out so you guys can have it. There's a video on the Plano website that shows the overlay process and what it looks like too.
Additional spray, we have to post it separately. And come back later on and come out on top of the paper. Found out what happens if you try to apply that and bring up that emulsion. Especially there's a turn lanes and the crossover. They try to turn that paper over, bring up the emulsion, then you don't have anything. Make the ultra thin layer stick. So, that's why we went to the conventional method, because the big machine can't turn so well in those small areas. On the turn lanes and crosses. The product is really designed to go straight. Yeah. Now, turn lanes and cross sections, those are still order. Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so we're gonna do a little rapid fire, just a little, since we have a few minutes before we go into the main presentation. I'll do a couple of rapid fire questions. Plano residents, hands up, Plano residents. How many of you have called into the city and said, I'm a Plano resident and an engineer? Just me? Just me? Okay, just me. Not true, but how many of you have that Fix It Plano app on your phone? Plano residents, non-Plano residents, thank you. Yes, if you don't have it on your phone, get it on your phone. It's there to help replace not just your asphalt. You can get your trash bins replaced. You can report downed illumination poles. I've done that. You can get your signals returned. Chad right here. So for those of you in Plano, this is a great opportunity to meet the staff who keep our city running. Okay, and we want to thank Abby and Samson and Chris for showing up to us this month and presenting on the condition of our pavement in Plano and the plan moving forward and how we're going to keep it rolling in Plano. Amanda has a quick announcement on next month's technical session.
All right, thank you everyone for joining. And next month, our technical session presentation will be hosted by the Structural Engineering Institute. Our speaker will be David Thompson from Hewitt-Zollars, presenting on the Old Iron Bridge. So definitely join us for that next month.
Thank you, Amanda.